Sid Vicious was accused of his girlfriend Nancy Spungen murder, yet it was never proven. However, a letter he wrote to her mother before he died shed new light on the mystery. Sid Vicious rose to fame as the second bassist for the punk rock band the Sex Pistols, but it wasn't for his musical talent. A friend once described him as everything in punk that was dark, decadent and nihilistic. From fights in clubs to brushes with danger and one fateful final night, Vicious's dark rise to fame came to a tragic end all too soon.
We weren't the nice boys they thought we were. We aren't nice boys. We were nasty little and we still are.
To escape the doldrums of her own life, Sid's mother, Anne, had joined the British Army, where she'd fallen for a trombone-playing guardsman named John Ritchie. She gave birth to Simon John Ritchie, aka Sid Vicious, in May 1957 in London. Shortly after, Sid's father walked out on the family. Without any support, his mother had to scrape by however she could. Later, she married a man named Christopher Beverley, hoping to provide a stable father figure for her now 8-year-old son. But 6 months later, he died of kidney failure. Once again, Sid was without a father. By 1973, Sid's mother had fallen into addiction. While she numbed herself with any substance she could get her hands on, Sid had to struggle alone, attending a community college for kids on the edge. There, he made a desperate confession to a school counsellor. He admitted he was struggling, and he was scared he might act on it. There was no one to answer his heartbreaking cry for help, least of all his mother. That same year, in the throes of her addiction, Anne kicked 16-year-old Sid out of their house. She reportedly said, "It's either you or me, and it's not going to be me." When he told her that he had nowhere else to go, she replied, "I don't care." Out on the streets, Sid had to find his own family, and he found it in others just like him. He started hanging out with fellow Kingsway College student John Lydon, who in turn introduced him to John Gray and John Wardle. Together they became the Four Johns, a crew of squatters, dropouts and punk pioneers. They may have lived in filth, but they lived on their own terms. At the time, Sid was still known as Simon John Ritchie, and gained his new nickname when Lydon's pet hamster named Sid after Sid Barrett, the co-founder of Pink Floyd, bit him. The teenager yelled out, "Sid is really vicious," and the name stuck. So he had the stage name, but he definitely didn't have the talent. Unlike other punk legends, or depending on your opinion, much like other punk legends, Sid Vicious wasn't a gifted musician. Before he rose to infamy, he and Lydon, who had started going by the name Johnny Rotten, busked in the streets, playing Alice Cooper covers, badly. So badly that people tossed coins at them just to make them stop. It was pathetic. It was punk. It was exactly what Sid was chasing. In 1975, Johnny Rotten formed a band called the Sex Pistols. As his best friend, Sid quickly became their biggest fan, but not necessarily for the music. At a 1976 show, when the band unleashed chaos upon their own fans, Sid watched on with stars in his eyes. He wanted to be just like them. Before he joined the Sex Pistols, Sid co-founded a band of his own called the Flowers of Romance. In June 1976, Sid went to see a Sex Pistols show at the 100 Club. When music critic Nick Kent blocked his view, a high as a kite Sid whipped out a rusted motorcycle chain that he regularly carried with him and smashed it across Kent's head. The incident made the papers, and thus began Sid's rise to infamy. Despite co-founding Flowers of Romance, the band never played a single live show. Nevertheless, Sid's antics off the stage caught the attention of other punk bands, and he found himself in the running to front legendary band The Damned. But when it came time to audition, he didn't even show up. His self-destructive behaviour only got worse.
Punk rock has become almost a battle cry in British society. For many people, it's a bigger threat to our way of life than Russian communism or hyperinflation.
Later that year, he was back at the 100 Club, this time to see The Damned, the same band he was supposed to be fronting. Wasted, he hurled a pint glass at their singer, Dave Vanian, mid-performance. The glass hit a pillar, then exploded into the crowd. When one of the shards of glass struck a woman in the eye, she became blind. The incident landed Sid in Ashford Remand Centre. This incident only made him even more of a punk rock legend in the making. In February 1977, the Sex Pistols manager Malcolm McLaren tossed out their bassist, Glenn Matlock. According to McLaren, Matlock liked the Beatles too much. They had their eye on someone who was truly punk rock. Just like that, Sid had gotten what he truly wanted, to become a member of his favourite band. Before he joined, Sid never missed a show. After joining, he wasn't just encouraged to go off the rails, he was expected to. His antics had the intended effect. A major record label started paying attention. Thanks to Sid's wild punk rock attitude, the band signed with A&M Records in March 1977. But it was hard to tell if they were happy about it. Sid and his bandmates celebrated by trashing the label's offices. The ink on the contract had barely dried before the band's chaotic celebrations spilled over into the Speakeasy Club that same night. There, the band spotted DJ Bob Harris from the Old Grey Whistle Test, a BBC TV music show. They cornered him, demanding to know when they'd be on his show. Bottles in hand, they pinned him behind the bar and sparked a brawl. Amid the chaos, Sid rammed a broken bottle into the face of BBC engineer George Nicholson, drawing blood from a deep gash. The next day, the fallout had already begun. A&M Records tore up their contract, while Capital Radio banned their music. Sid played his first gig with his new band on April 3rd, 1977, at the Screen on the Green. It wasn't exactly a triumphant debut. He had virtually no experience as a bassist, so when it came time to record the band's debut album, Nevermind the Bollocks, Steve Jones had to step in. As the rest of the band worked on perfecting their sound in the studio, Sid was holed up in a hospital bed with hepatitis, likely the result of his intravenous substance use. In 1977, the same year that the Sex Pistols released their debut album, Sid met someone who would change his life forever, and not necessarily for the better: Nancy Spungen. An American expat with a reputation for trouble, Spungen latched onto the London punk scene and quickly became Sid's other half, his much worse half. Johnny Rotten had been the original target of Spungen's dangerous affections, but once she set her sights on Sid, everything changed. The caustic pairing burned through the band, creating a rift in the once tight-knit group. McLaren, the band's manager, was so desperate to get rid of her, he considered having her deported back to the US. Behind closed doors, Sid and Nancy had a troubling relationship. Not only was there speculation that he beat her, but there were rumours that he encouraged her to sell her body so that he could watch. Despite his own struggles, Sid toured Scandinavia, the Netherlands, and the UK with his bandmates, with, of course, Nancy in tow. The tour was supposed to promote the band's debut album, and it worked. Nevermind the Bollocks hit #1 on the charts and is still considered to be one of the best punk albums of all time. By January of 1978, their punk rock sound had reached the US, sparking demand for a tour. Warner Brothers, the tour's backer, demanded that Sid sober up and swapped out his usual fix for methadone. Unfortunately, it didn't help. Throughout the tour, Sid was sick, miserable and short-tempered. Worse yet, they'd barred Nancy from joining him.
Again, you dirty f***er.
What a clever boy.
What a rotter.
Well, that's it for tonight. I'll be seeing you soon. I hope I'm not seeing you again. From me, though, good night.
Before a Dallas show, Sid did something that shocked even the most ardent punk rock fans. He wrote "Gimme a Fix" on his chest. With that, the Sex Pistols were done. And so was Sid. Almost. After the tour, the band effectively broke up. Sid then flew from San Francisco to New York, and barely made it. High on a diet that consisted of methadone, diazepam and alcohol, he slipped into unconsciousness before the plane touched down. When he woke up in the hospital, a doctor informed him that if he didn't stop, he'd be dead in 6 months. As soon as he left the hospital, Sid ran straight back to Nancy. The two jetted off to Paris to shoot The Great Rock and Roll Swindle, but spent most of their time locked in their hotel room getting high. Even when he tried to record some music, he returned from a session and made a disturbing discovery. Nancy had self-harmed in fear that he'd left her. She stepped in as Sid's manager, landing him gigs throughout the US. However, it quickly became apparent that something was missing. The crowds that attended his shows expected to get a taste of the full band. What they got was a cheap knockoff. The crowds heckled Sid for his low-rent Johnny Rotten impersonation. In return, he cursed out his hecklers. On October 11th, 1978, Sid and Nancy threw a party in their hotel room. Sid downed 30 sedatives and passed out cold. While he was comatose, his party guests came and went. But the next morning, when the party was over, he found that he was all alone. At 11 AM on October 12th, hotel staff found something horrifying in Sid's room. Nancy's lifeless body. Sprawled out on the bathroom floor in a pool of blood, she'd been murdered. For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factinate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details. When police arrived on the scene, Sid confessed to the gruesome act. But right after confessing, he took it all back. His behaviour after that only confused matters more. After his confession, authorities decided to bring charges against him, but in his official statement he gave conflicting accounts of events. On the one hand, he said that he and Nancy had a fight. He also said that he remembered nothing at all. Then he claimed that Nancy had simply fallen on the knife. Guilty or not, one thing was clear. He was not a reliable source. With his music career and innocence hanging in the balance, Virgin Records footed the $50,000 bail on the conditions that he had to stay in New York, check in with the police daily, and show up at his methadone clinic. In the meantime, he returned to the Chelsea Hotel with the Pistols' manager, Malcolm McLaren, and fatefully, his mother. McLaren didn't believe for 1 second that Sid did it. While he believed that Sid could harm himself, he didn't believe he was capable of taking someone else's life. And with so many people going in and out of the room that night, anyone could have done the deed. At the behest of his lawyer, he met with a forensic psychiatrist who said that Sid seemed somewhat detached from reality. His final analysis: do not leave Sid unattended. It was a warning that came too late. Only hours after his meeting with the psychiatrist, Sid had hurt himself. As authorities and medics arrived, he tried to flee through a window. Thankfully, the psychiatrist blocked him before he could leap to his doom. After a much-needed stay in a psychiatric facility, Sid returned to the Chelsea Hotel in late November of 1978. Just 2 days later, he gave an interview to the Irish journalist Bernard Clark.
Where would you like to be?
Under the ground.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
On December 5th, Sid went to Hurrah nightclub with an entourage, but when he began making advances on a girl named Tara, her boyfriend Todd Smith, brother of punk legend Patti Smith, stepped in. Sid, irate at the intrusion, smashed a bottle and slashed Smith in the face. The gash was so deep that it required 5 stitches. The court determined that Sid had violated his previous bail terms and ordered him to Rikers Island, where he underwent opiate detox. What happened next stunned everyone. Given that he was already out on bail, it seemed almost inevitable that he'd go away for a long time. To everyone's shock, the judge agreed to release Sid once again, even reducing his bail to $10,000. By mid-January of 1979, he was back on the street. Once he was out of detox, Sid had a chance encounter, one that would prove fatal. Randomly, he ran into a friend, Peter Gravel, on the street and asked him about procuring some substances. That night, Gravel delivered $200 worth to an apartment in Manhattan, where Sid was staying with friends. Along with his mother and a group of friends, Sid indulged himself. Though his friends were already concerned about his condition, given that he'd just come out of detox, one of them reportedly gave him 4 sedatives to help him sleep. It was a sleep from which he would never awaken. That night, Sid Vicious drifted off into the closest thing resembling peace in his life, and simply never woke up. The next morning, coming down from a high herself, his mother discovered his lifeless body under the blankets she had draped him in. He was 21 years old. Following his death, his mother said she found a note in her son's jacket. It read, "We had a death, and I have to keep my half of the bargain. Please bury me next to my baby. Bury me in my leather jacket, jeans, and motorcycle boots. Goodbye."
He was my friend, and I miss him very much. And I felt really guilty about bringing him into the Pistols because he was ill-equipped mentally to deal with the pressures.
Sid carried many secrets to his grave, including what really happened the night his girlfriend Nancy died. That is, if he really knew. However, not long after, people began to whisper that they knew who the real killer was. Rocket's Red Glare was a fixture in the punk scene in New York. Not only had he been the one to bring Sid sedatives on the night of Nancy's death, many began to claim that he'd been the one to kill her. Though he publicly denied involvement, many in the New York scene claimed that he'd confessed to them. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. If you want a say in who we cover next, join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.